Sunny TV, ladies and gentlemen, good morning and welcome back to another edition of Edmonton Oilers discussion here on the channel this fine Sunday. It looks like it's a beautiful day outside. Don't let that fool you. Apparently it's cold, it's chilly, and it's getting gross because it is August 30th. We are 2 days away from September, today, tomorrow, and then big old Tuesday is September 1st, and then we get a long weekend the weekend after, so that's all good. All right, math, calendar math, whatever you want to call it, seasonal math aside, the Oilers still in that off-season mode as I talked about yesterday. However, not every team's in the off-season mode. What we did talk about yesterday is the fact that Ken Holland does not foresee the Oilers making moves before the playoffs are over. Moves, I mean trades. So, that kind of leaves us open to what I went into next. Is the first time you'd see the Oilers make a trade is probably within that entry draft, right? Entry draft, which involves the first round, 14th overall, yada yada yada. Well, now today in Kurt Leavins' article, the 9 Things article on Edmonton Journal, if you're unfamiliar with what Kurt Leavins does every Sunday, is he has a point number 6 here. If Ken Holland can find an upgrade to Mikko Koskinen and find a landing spot for the big goalie's $4.5 million contract, then maybe Smith stays. And this would be talking about point number 7, in which Mr. Mike Smith earned his performance bonuses, and so does Mike Smith get re-signed, and it depends on what I've already mentioned in point 6. I'll be surprised if Holland does a complete redo in goal, Levin says, but at a minimum, I've written in this space, Holland will sign a veteran goalie on a one-way deal for the NHL Bakersfield role, so you'll see somebody kind of shaping up the kids down there in Bakersfield in Skinner and Wells, which means that Shane Starrett's time in the Oilers system is 99% over, according to Kurt Leavins. You just never know what's going to happen in 2020, but if you're reading anything into that, that means Shane Starrett is done. Now, let's back up to if Ken Holland can find an upgrade to Mikko Koskinen and find a landing spot for the big goalie's $4.5 million contract. All right, that's a big one. That's a huge one right there, because that's really what a lot of us have kind of questioned over the past since the contract was signed. Is Mikko Koskinen tradable? Can we find someone better than him? Obviously, yes, you can find somebody better than Mike Smith, but for the price point, you're probably not going to be able to do it with Mikko Koskinen in net. Problem is, whether you trade Mikko Koskinen for a better goalie or not, you're not going to find somebody better than Mikko Koskinen realistically at 4.5 that's going to allow you to get someone better in the backup role. You know what I mean? So let's just quickly back up to the list of goaltenders' salaries as it stands right now and get into that 4.5 or less range. So 4.5 or less, you've got Jordan Binnington, Jake Allen, Devin Dubnyk, Ante Ranta, Jimmy Howard, Matt Murray, Jacob Markstrom, Andrei Vasilevsky, James Reimer, Thomas Greiss, Philip Grubauer, Peter Mrazek, Jonathan Bernier, Cam Talbot, Carter Hutton, Yaroslav Halak, David Riddick, Anders Nielsen, Anton Hudobin, Mike Condon. I think that's where we need to stop at the 40th highest paid goalie in the NHL. So I've gone from 21 to 40. And in there, yeah, you heard some names, right? You heard some names you might be interested in. But realistically, are any of them that big of an improvement on a guy like Mikko Koskinen? Yeah, Devin Dubnyk, sure. Ante Ranta, sure. Jake Allen, what he showcased this year, sure. But he only played 24 games. Jacob Markstrom, absolutely. But are you going to be able to get him for 4.5 or less in the free agent market? So what do you do in a trade situation there? Philip Grubauer not leaving the Avalanche. Highly doubt that. And then the other guys, Yaroslav Halak, he's the new starter in Boston. Tuukka Rask, more than 90% done. So then all of a sudden you start talking about the top half goalies, and a guy like Tuukka Rask's worth $7 million. Well, I doubt you're trading for Tuukka Rask, especially a guy that's, 32 years old, and a lot of questions now swirling if he is in fact just done playing hockey. And you see leaving the bubble given the circumstances, right? Okay, so let's eliminate Tuukka Rask. And then where else do you go? Up in the top echelon of paid goalies, they're all old. Frederik Andersen, I know maybe that's been mentioned a little bit for Oilers, maybe more so by just fans speculating that the Leafs and Oilers could benefit from such a thing. Semyon Varlamov, Robin Lehner. I guess you could throw in Marc-Andre Fleury, who's now disgruntled in Pittsburgh, but really, Marc-Andre Fleury's numbers are no better than Mikko Koskinen's. End of the day, you give Mikko Koskinen some offense, he's better than Marc-Andre Fleury. So yeah, you get back into the pecking order here and you kind of look at the only guy above 4.5 that I'd be really interested in, and I think really you have to figure out what you can do with him if you can get him, is Ben Bishop. That's the name I would be targeting out of Dallas, but I don't think you're going to get him based on Anton Khudobin still being there as well. I think they're very content to have that as a goaltending duo, and it really fits well for Dallas. So you kind of look at that, right? Is the guys that I've mentioned on the list, there is not a goalie better in those price ranges than Mikko Koskinen. So a tough go if you're trying to trade Mikko Koskinen for any of those guys, and especially if you're going upwards, you have to trade extra salary and you have to make it worth it. And Mikko Koskinen 1-for-1, my friends, is not going to be worth most of those guys. So that's just it. And that's not saying Mikko Koskinen's a bad goalie. It's just he hasn't earned that right to be traded 1-for-1 for most of those guys on the list. However, if you could find a way to trade Mikko Koskinen plus a little bit for Ben Bishop, I'll give you the clause details on Ben Bishop's modified no trade clause. It's 2020 and 2021-22. Player submits a 10-team no trade list in those years, and then 22-23 he submits an 8-team no trade list. So really, Ben Bishop, if you need to move on because you've got a goaltender ready to take over in 2021-2022, i.e. Ilya Konovalov, or maybe an Olivier Rodrigue, or maybe a Stuart Skinner, you name one of the three guys we've got in the system, go figure that out. Okay, you're able to do it. But the only issue is, let's back up one more step to really figuring out this upgrading on Mikko Koskinen thing, because it's going to be a little harder than it is. You only have half the NHL to negotiate when it comes down to trading Mikko Koskinen. The clause details on his contract, the first time I've ever looked him up, because realistically I haven't worried about trading Koskinen because I've thought we could work with him, and we have. But if it's a suggestion, let's discuss it. Player submits a 15-team no-trade list. So Mikko Koskinen only has half the teams in the NHL to be dealt with, or dealt to. So that's an interesting go there as well. But you kind of see there is some ways the Oilers could work this. And I mean, I guess Tristan Jarry out of Pittsburgh might be another option there that we haven't mentioned. But there's a lot of guys in the NHL the Oilers could go target and net, but again, trading Mikko Koskinen might not exactly solve all the problems. But I mean, you never know, right? It's not necessarily Mikko Koskinen for another goalie. That doesn't necessarily have to be the trade. If you can find a free agent goaltender in the list, let me see if I can find one here, and cap hit, extension, salary structure, contract type. Where do I find this on Cap Friendly? Come on, Tyson, you know this. Free agents, there we go. I need to go to free agents. Let me just do that little bit of work for you and tell you what's up. Free agents in 2021 by position, goaltender, and let's update the results quickly. So Braden Holtby, right there, there's a name for you. Corey Crawford, yeah, no. Robin Lehner, I think that more than likely Robin Lehner is staying in Vegas now. Greg Anderson, Jimmy Howard, Matt Murray's an RFA, Jacob Markstrom, Thomas Greiss, Anton Khudobin. So maybe actually there is something to that whole Dallas ploy about moving Ben Bishop to Edmonton. That could be something we could look at because Khudobin's a UFA and they may re-sign him for bigger money. But end of the day, anybody else down there that you really want to talk about? Linus Ullmark, Laurent Brossoit, Louis Domingue, Ryan Miller, Matt Robson. I really don't think there's anyone anybody wants to talk about. Alexander Georgiev, who's an RFA. Yeah, I don't think anybody wants to have any discussions about those guys. So You get where I'm coming from, right? Is there are some options out there if you move Mikko Koskinen. The only question is, right, eliminate a 1-from-1 to upgrade goaltending. You'll have to give up something plus to get a better goalie than Koskinen. That's how getting something better works, in case I haven't explained that in this video. And secondary to that, you don't necessarily have to trade Mikko Koskinen for a goaltender if you can indeed find a goaltender in the free agent market. And of course, that all ramifications down to who do you sign in the backup role? Do you re-sign Mike Smith? Do you sign that veteran NHL Bakersfield guy? What do you do to transition this goaltending core, right? This goaltending core that Mikko Koskinen is the biggest key piece at the NHL level about, from Mikko Koskinen to Stuart Skinner and Olivier Rodrigue, Ilya Konovalov, 2 to 3 years from now, with Mikko Koskinen entering his last 2 years of his contract, right? By 22, we got to know what we've got in our prospects. And right now, I don't think we're all too set on what we've got in our prospects, because Rodrigue will just be getting to the point that we might know what we have in him by the time 22 rolls around. So guys, let me know your thoughts in the comments section down below. I'm Tyson, this is Stolen TV. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on your way out. I will catch you in the next one.